My name is Carolyn, and I talk to the spirit world. Travel with me to a dimension filled with love, light, and joyful surprises. Welcome to Carolyn's Psychic Playroom.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Carolyn's Psychic Playroom. I am so excited to see you all. Well, I can't see you, but I can pretend, and to be seen by you, sharing another episode of wonderful talk and visits with people who are at the crossroads of creativity and spirituality. That's what Carolyn's Psychic Playroom is all about. And so this week's guest is an amazing psychic. He's a medium, but he's also a social activist and an author. His name is Brian Bowes, and I know that you are going to enjoy getting to know him as I have. Before I bring Brian up, however, I always like to do a little bit of a reading for the collective here at Carolyn's Psychic Playroom. So I have my African American Tarot deck, and I am going to just quickly shuffle the cards. And you'll hear me kind of doing a little shuffling here in the background. I'll shuffle the cards, and then let's see what our collective needs to know coming up in the next 2 weeks. This program is going to air at the end of August, beginning of September. What does our group need to know? I'm sorry, mid-August to early September. So no matter when you may be watching this program, I have made the intention that this card that I pull is going to speak to you. So let's see what Spirit would like us to know about these next couple of weeks. So I've shuffled the cards a little bit. I'm going to spread them out. And this card is the Five of Swords. Can you see that? First of all, it's a gorgeous deck. It's a gorgeous deck. Beautiful colors. Here we have the warrior. He is sneaking past this tiger, having killed it, and he is now kind of sneaking away in case the tiger might have one last little oomph in him. He's sneaking away, and we have, along with this, I believe that this is John Lewis, civil rights demonstrator, being arrested for the nth time, speaking up for his values of what's important. And so I'm going to just interpret this card a little bit psychic for us today. I feel that we have succeeded in the last few weeks in knocking out some of the things that have been bothering us, some of the concerns, some of the things that have plagued us. The adversary, we've stabbed him. He's down, but he's not completely out. We do need to be careful and not linger around. Things that you know don't serve you, walk away, stay away. Even though you may feel that you have conquered a particular bad habit or addiction, don't tempt yourself. Know your limits. Know when it's time to walk away. I will say also at the same time, don't be afraid to stand up for what you believe in. Even if there's adversaries, even if there are people saying, you know what's right. Now is the time more than ever to do what is right, stand up for what you believe in, but don't tempt fate, don't push your luck. Try to find that sweet spot where you both speak your truth, speak what you believe to be true, and at the same time walk in moderation, in balance, and using your common sense. Okay, I hope that this reading has been helpful, and I will now, without further ado, bring up my wonderful guest, Brian Bowles. So, hi everyone, this is Carolyn Wilkins, and I'm welcoming you to my kitchen table. We are having a kitchen table interview day. I've been kind of moving my environment to the kitchen table to have interviews because it brings this kind of nice feeling of intimacy, and you can imagine that you're actually sitting with a cup of tea and me and my guest, and we're kind of having a lovely conversation. So, my guest this particular episode is Brian Bowles. Welcome to the Psychic Playroom, Brian.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. It's so good to be with you.
Oh, I'm just honored. As I was saying to Brian earlier, I've been trying to connect with him for at least a year, and we've been kind of playing different sort of, we don't play phone tag anymore, but I guess it's messenger tag or something. And we eventually were able to connect. Brian is a medium, he is an author, and he's just an all around interesting person with a very fascinating perspective on social justice issues, and just with a lot to say. So I'm really thrilled, Brian, that we have finally gotten together to do this. So I'm going to jump right in with asking you a question. And I ask all my guests this question, which is, how was it that you actually got started with mediumship? Did you know from your earliest growing up days that you were psychic, or did this come later for you?
Well, I failed as a drag queen. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Nobody ever offered to put
Bada
me in a dress.
bing.
They would look at me. They'd be like, "No, we're never gonna put that weirdo in heels." But no, but I think, I wonder about that a lot. I think all of us as mediums have, haven't we? I've never really believed that we inherit mediumship through our bloodline. It's just never felt true for me. But I can't imagine a spiritual experience like this belonging to a lineage. It doesn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
But anyway, having said that, I've always kind of felt that trauma is the foundation of mediumship for myself.
Mm.
It's not true for everybody. I'm not making up a rule. But having gone through a lot of trauma as a kiddo, I think that kind of opens us up in a different way and makes us go inward. Because I've come to believe that to survive some of those experiences, we go inward, and we have to go into our inner life to be able to survive the outer life. And so I think that's how that whole thing began. And I remember having some experiences with spirit, especially seeing the movie Pinocchio of all things. My mom tells the story of the angel coming to the window, um, and I don't remember the rest of Pinocchio.
Ah!
I just kind of chatted with her the whole time. So that's a funny story, but I guess my mom
Wow.
was like, she's like, you weren't really watching the movie and you had your head down, but you looked like you were sleeping. And I was like, no. So it became kind of a funny thing. So I still have not seen Pinocchio, but I also think it's kind of fun that that experience happened. But when I was working in hospice as a family therapist, because I dealt with so much death, because of the AIDS epidemic, I think, and
Yes.
I didn't choose that. I mean, when you look on paper, it would look like I chose to be in hospice as a family therapist, but it really didn't unfold that way. Spirit definitely had a role in all of that. I was supposed to be in an after-school program doing my internship, and I got a call from Denver Hospice. Actually, the lead clinical person at Regis asked me to do an interview at do an interview at Denver Hospice,
Mm.
and I sat down for a 45-minute interview, and it's about 3 hour long chat, and I
Wow.
just instantly felt like a part of that team. And
Mm.
so I ended up working in hospice and kind of defined my therapeutic life they talked a lot about how our grief doesn't tell us what's wrong with us. It only tells us what's right with us. It tells us that we love. And in that journey, I met a medium who I didn't believe in. And I was actually angry with her because I felt like she was taking advantage of people. And so when I met her, I had all this judgment and belief systems I was really, pushing out against her. And then she said, well, you're a medium too. And when you get over yourself, call me. And that's kind of that kind of, that's pretty much how it kind of unfolded. It was like, no, you're me.
Wow, what a great story. That's
That's how it happened.
awesome.
Yeah, I went to her
Wow.
office and she connected me with a friend of mine that died, and I could not deny any of it. There
Mhm.
was no amount of skepticism or cynicism that would have prevented me from being able to believe that my loved one was there.
Nice.
There's just no way.
Nice.
And then
And
she asked me to
sometimes
connect with.
that's the blow that we need, like the to say, okay, this is real. And then what happened?
Well, it's a miracle, isn't it, Carolyn? Just what you said. We need that blow, that kind
Hmm.
of intense experience for us to get out of our cynicism. Because my cynicism was what I went to protect myself, because the world had failed me. So I had this storyline. So, all of my pain couldn't possibly have meaning. And so it was interesting at that moment. Every story I'd ever had in my life had to be retold. And she asked me to connect. I'll never forget it. She said, I want you to connect with, I'm pretty sure she directed me to connect with a dog in the room. So I connect with little Poodle, and she said, oh, that's from my childhood. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. I didn't really believe her, frankly. And then she said, well, just give me, connect with another dog in the room. And so I paused and I connected, and I felt this dog, and he looked like a bear, and he had a kind of a lion's mane and all this kind of stuff. But I kept feeling like he was like a teddy bear. And long story short, and the dog revealed some personal stuff about what was going on in her journey at the time. But she got up and she went to her daughter's room and came back with a silver frame that said bear on it. And it was the very dog that I had just interacted with.
Wow.
And so it just was like, and I stepped away from it for about, I think, a year before I reached out to her again, because it was
Wow.
just too much,
It's intense. I'm going to just put a pin in that there because I do want to just comment for those of you who might be watching, who might be at this point, where Brian was a few years ago of kind of just beginning to discover, wow, maybe I too have these gifts. Sometimes the realization can be overwhelming, and you just mentioned needing to step back for a while. Sometimes it's not that we doubt it, it's just that it's like, oh my gosh, if we really buy into this, we're going to have to redo our entire view of the world and our entire view of ourselves, right? And
Yes.
what is really possible. So I'm going to segue now to, obviously, you are now a full blown medium doing readings and so forth and so on. But I also want to talk about another aspect of your gifts, Brian, because you have so much to offer. You have written a marvelous memoir about your journey and your experiences, and a little bit about what it's like to be you as a medium. And can you share a little bit about writing? When did you first get into writing, and how did you get inspired to write your book?
Well, I'd been placed on disability for a brain issue that I have. I was getting bad headaches at work, and we had just opened up a school together, my dear friend and I, called the Compassion Road Academy, working with kids coming out of detention centers,
Wow.
because we found that their home schools were not receiving them and with a lot of hopefulness, and there was a lot of racism and a lot of nonsense that was happening for these kiddos. So and I don't want to give me too much credit in that because it makes me sound like such a lovely person, but it was really more my friend Kim Ortiz that started that. And I just got to kind of benefit from being beside her and kind of seeing what it looks like to take your passions and put them into action. But anyway, in the midst of all that, I was having this big mediumistic experience that I could no longer put to the side. And I had to start writing about it so I could make sense of it for myself. And I would just put little essays on Facebook. And I had about 160 people on Facebook, including girlfriends from high school. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, anyway. Nice to see you after all these years. Like, it was a little bit that. So it was just kind of funny, But I just kind of, my intent as a writer was to be authentic and not ever speak from a place of authority and being Mr. Smarty Pants about anything. But really to try to be in that energy of vulnerability where I'm always appreciative of writers that are trying to figure it out.
Yes.
And they're not giving people rules to follow that they've made up. I'm not a fan of the rules that people make up.
Yeah.
So all to say that everything had to be authentic and grounded in a real experience. So that's kind of how things have unfolded. And I didn't really plan on writing a book. I don't think most authors do. I think you just start writing because you feel like you have to.
Yes.
And then it unfolded into a book. And just now I'm starting to do more of the fiction kind of books that you write, more that are interesting and have lead characters. And it's so much fun. I can't wait for you to read this current one I'm writing, but they're not as good as yours yet. But it takes time. It just takes time. Let's just be real. But it's also, I think what I would also say, Carolyn, is creativity is a way for me to connect with the divine without an agenda. So
That's
much of mediumship
beautiful.
has an agenda. And
Wait,
creativity
I'm
just,
going to pause you right there because that was so brilliant. I don't want people to miss it. A lot of the people who watch here are creative people, and it's beautiful how you just said that. Creativity is a way to connect to the divine without an agenda. Because you're right, when we do mediumship, particularly if it's evidential mediumship, we're going to spirit and we're asking for specific people to come and for them to bring us specific pieces of information so that we can validate to the person sitting in front of us that we do in fact have their grandmother, that we're not making it up, that she's real and that she has a message to bring. But creativity is that same divine, it uses that same divine channel. I would even go further to say creativity is almost like a form of mediumship. Wouldn't you say so? In that we are channeling the voice of spirit. And of course, it's coming through our filter. So that's why our life experience, because you're going to write about being a failed drag queen, and I'm maybe going to write more about growing up on the south side of Chicago. But it is still that connection to spirit. So the book that I read, which I believe is the book that you're talking about, did you publish this book yourself, or can people find that and read that somewhere?
they can. So yeah, Letter to Young Medium is available on Amazon.
Good.
And it's still there. And it's interesting. I'm working with a new publisher, and I'm doing a Letter to Young Medium Volume 2.
Oh.
So they're going to re-release Letter to Young Medium as a Volume 1 because there's some things they wanted me to change about it. And they initially, the group that I was going to be working with, they wanted me to get rid of the beginning with the drag queen and the canyon. And I was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So because they're like, I think they kind of wanted me to like take more of me out of the book to make it more acceptable. And I was like, I'm not really interested in doing that. So I just think we have to be true to ourselves, don't we? In all this.
I do. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think also, especially where books are concerned, there are a zillion books where people talk about their journey to mediumship, and that's fine and lovely. But I think what will make your book special will be that it will have you and all your quirky humor, all your, all of those pieces of your journey. Because when we leave those out in an attempt to kind of blend in, I feel that we lose our uniqueness, and as you were talking about, authenticity. So this uniqueness and authenticity, I now want to roll into another thing. We were speaking before the show. I know that you are very involved with the Mediums of African Descent website that we have. And when I first saw you on there, I must say I was a little surprised. I was like, okay, I know he's gay and I'm looking, but he doesn't look like he's necessarily African American.
Pretty
So,
white.
no. So, I just love that. First of all, I love that you have jumped in and that you have really involved yourself in a very genuine and authentic way, not trying to be like cool, but being yourself, who you are. And could you share a little bit about your connection to the Black community? Because what you were just saying, you had mentors that go way back to when you were a kid.
Yeah, I have a responsibility. I actually think every white person does, frankly, but I had a responsibility to acknowledge the women that really helped to raise me and put me back together as a kiddo. I think specifically of Dorothea a lot, but there were two other women, and they were these women that lived in our neighborhood in North Park Hill, and we were one of the only white families in a community that was more African American, and it was such an honor, frankly, because these women taught me to love myself or taught me to accept myself. I don't know if I got to the point of loving myself. I don't think that would be honest, but I think they got me to the point of accepting myself. And Dorothy would read me the same book over and over again. And it's just really very, very special. And I write about in the letter to young medium, there's a whole chapter about this, about how another white medium connected with her and she imagined her as our housekeeper.
Wow.
And I was so upset. I had to get up and walk out. I was so angry. And here I am with all the privilege in the room, but I couldn't believe it. She could not imagine that this woman was the one that saved my life as a child. She had to place a role on her. She had her PhD. She was an
Yeah.
educator.
But
Such
this is
nonsense.
the mindset
Yes.
that, without judgment, I'm going to go ahead and say that is a manifestation of our cultural
That's right.
racism, is that we make assumptions about people. And if there is a Black woman connected with you in that sort of semi motherly role, there's the assumption. And we as mediums, of course, this is one of the deep parts of mediumship training. And I would say ongoing aspects of mediumship training is to learn to be able to put your preconceptions to the side and see things as they are without putting judgments. And obviously, this woman failed to do that in your case. But anyway, back to how you have connected. You were telling me that you feel that this African American woman has been sort of like a guide for you, even beyond the mothering that she gave you as a kid, but like even now. Is that can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, this gets pretty private, but I'm fine to go there. It's when I'm having the hardest moments of my life. When she shows up in spirit with me, that's when I know that I can just receive from her. There's no complexity to her love. It's just there. It's my first experience of what the word grace is. So when I'm with her, I can be in that state of grace with her. And so it's hard to explain to somebody because a lot of people say that your guides can't be people that you knew in life. And I just think that's a rule that somebody made up and it's not my rule. So I'm like, that's a great rule for someone else. It's not mine. So I just appreciate so much when Dorothy is present in spirit with me.
Yes.
And I'm probably too protective of that at times, frankly, because a medium has to have permission to make mistakes with race, and because otherwise we don't get smarter.
That's
There's
right.
no way for someone like me to get wiser about race if we're always in that defensive posture. But at the same time, it was just much more painful than I was expecting, actually, to be honest. And it was helpful to write about it. I didn't link it to the actual person in any way because that's not necessary. Is that the
Right.
lesson of that story that I wrote wasn't about the individual; it's about
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And because this idea that, because a lot of times you'll hear us as white people will say things like we'll talk about reverse racism.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a myth. I think reverse racism is a big, huge myth.
Mm.
And I think it's what we say so we don't have to look in the mirror and say, this is the way in which I use my privilege inappropriately or cause harm.
Yeah.
And it's tough. I get that initially to get past our own defensiveness. But I think in mediumship, I mean, Carolyn, can you imagine as a white person, how can I really tell the story of a person of color
Right.
if I don't care about their pain here in this life?
Exactly.
How can I
Because
ever
this has
resonate with that?
shaped the experience. You have to understand the experience of the person. And I would posit that the broader we as mediums can make our experience. So I should get to know Asian people. I should get to know Latinx people. I should get to know people from who knows where. I mean, all kinds of backgrounds and all that, because you never know who's going to walk into your Zoom room and need a reading. And if you are culturally blind to some of the things that may be going on with them, you're not going to be able to give them the reading. One last point I will say, because coming from the African American tradition, we have the tradition of the ancestors. And so I believe that we are guided not only by, angels and spirits and ascended masters and stuff like that, but by the ancestors who are elders who are here for the purpose of helping us on this earth, because as we all know, life on the earth can be pretty difficult. So we need all the help. So I say, and the ancestor is not necessarily a biological ancestor. It's a spiritual ancestor. And clearly the fact that she has come through and guided you and helped you in difficult times in your life, to me is an indication that she's functioning as that for you. Wow. So, Brian, amazingly, we have used up our 20 minutes. I can't believe it. There's so many more things I want to talk to you about. I'll have to have you again
I
another
love it,
time.
Carolyn.
But in the meantime, before we go, can you just tell people a little bit about where they can find you? What's the best way if someone has been watching this and going, oh my gosh, I need to read Letters to a Young Medium. I want to know about Brian. I know you're on Facebook, but tell people what's the best way for them to reach you.
I think the best way to reach me, weirdly, is actually probably on Facebook. They can buy Letter to a Young Medium on Amazon. And if
Okay.
they can't afford it for any reason, they can just email me at halfway through the woods, all spelled out, halfway through the woods at
Beautiful.
gmail.com. And
Beautiful.
I'll just forward them the PDF. And I've
Wow.
done that with a lot of people. So I don't ever want money to be
Wow.
the bearer. That's how I do my work as a medium too. Whoever can't afford the work, I always do the work, and then people decide if they want to pay me or not. Because if they didn't have an evidential
Wow.
experience, I don't receive any money from folks.
Wow.
So the person with $5 in their pocket can get the same reading as a person with $200. That's always been my intent, and I've never. I tried to change that for 2 weeks, and I was miserable. I was like, this is not me. I'm trying to be something I'm not, and I
Mm-hmm.
went back to how I charge, because I just didn't want the experience of mediumship to be only available to people with money in their pockets. It didn't feel right to me.
Yeah. No,
So
that's
I switched
beautiful.
how I did things, but that doesn't make me some saintly person. I have some privilege around that because my husband's retired and we have some stability with our income. So I just want to
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that. So I don't sound like some saintly person, because that's not me in any way. But it helps to acknowledge that, because, having gone through times when money was an issue, sometimes people need our help, love, and support and assistance, and they may not have big bank accounts. And I think
That's right.
if we're here to serve, then money should never be the gateway to that.
That's
I think that's
brilliant.
what we have to be careful of.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Well, there you have it, Psychic Playroom friends. Brian Bowles, and I must say, medium, social activist, author, and all around great guy / failed drag queen.
I mean, exactly. We should end with that.
I
Would
think
you put
we
this in a
should.
dress? Would you
No.
put this in a dress? Carol? No.
No.
RuPaul's not calling.
No,
Nice to meet everybody.
No. It was great having you on, and thank you so much, Brian. Bye for now.
Thanks, Carolyn. Blessings.
Hi, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed that interview as much as I enjoyed it. As you can see, Brian is an amazing person. He's so creative. He's so gifted. He's also a wonderful healer and at the same time an activist, speaking his truth in the world and walking his talk. So you definitely want to check him out. Check out his books. I will put a link for information about Brian, how you can reach him, and how you can get his books. I'm going to put a link below so that you can take a look. And meanwhile, I will just say once again, thank you for joining me for this episode of Carolyn's Psychic Playroom. Don't forget our tarot card, which was all about walking away from temptation. You've slain it, but don't push your luck. See, he's walking away from this tiger feeling all smug, but here's a lion lurking, right? So don't push your luck, but at the same time, do speak up for the things that matter. Do speak up for the things that matter. So it was a kind of a bifurcated message, both and, but hopefully helpful for you. So once again, this is Carolyn Wilkins. I'm so thrilled that you could come and join me in the Psychic Playroom today. And if you would like either to receive a reading from me or to find out about the other things I offer, I have a beautiful healing practice that I do with music called Piano Trance Healing. If you're interested or you would like to hear a sample or check that out, all of those things are available on my website. I'm also an author. I have 6 books out, including 3 murder mysteries. So if that kind of thing sounds like fun, check those out. So once again, it's my great honor and pleasure to be with you today. Have a wonderful, wonderful 2 weeks until I see you again. And yeah, this is Carolyn Wilkins wishing you great joy and blessings.
Thoughts are things with the energy to make life better for you and for me. Touch the light.